Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, keep your buckles on. Today we're talking about the wonderful world of dating. Ready or not, let's get into it. Well, it is true. Let's just be honest here for a moment, all right? You've got two middle-aged guys who have daughters, and so that's just how it's going to be for a minute.
Yep.
We also have boys, which is interesting because Alvin always talks about protecting your daughters.
Right.
But I'll tell you, there's some ladies out there that I'm going to protect my sons from.
Yep.
And I know for sure my wife's going to protect my sons from.
Yeah.
And so, look, I think it's guarding the heart, but this is probably not a very fair way to start this conversation. So either we run with it or we start over.
I think it's great.
All right.
I think it's great.
We're just going to run with it. We are who we are.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I think about dating, and I think automatically when I think about dating, I think about not the time that I was dating, because to me that's like light years ago. I think about now.
Nate
that
is older than me, just for the record.
Yeah. I think about my daughter that's at that age where she's, boys are coming into the scene and she's wanting to talk to boys, and I have to get to know these boys that she's talking to. It's a whole different ball of wax. But then, like you said, I do think there's something to be said that it's just a different world. I think when my wife and I started dating in the beginning, it was a different time. We did a lot of talking on the phone. There was no texting. There was no social media. None of those things that we had to contend with back then at all. We had a lot of conversations. We did social gatherings, which didn't involve a smart device. It was in person. We spent a lot of time in person at the beach, going to movies. Trying to hang out with groups of people so that we didn't get into dicey situations.
No, is that your own doing? You actually wanted that?
No.
Okay. So here's the deal, right? On one hand, we are living in a different time. On the other hand, dating is instigated by the same exact emotions and needs that you and I had when we were younger.
This is true.
Right. So whether it's phone, FaceTime, texting, or it had to be a social gathering for us, and phones weren't as easily accessible. It was instigated and brought on by this interesting, weird desire to connect with someone of the opposite sex.
That's true.
So, dating.
Yeah.
How long did you and Julie date before you got married? Actually, before you got engaged and then ultimately, I guess, married.
I think it was like 4 years.
Okay.
So we met, though, when she was 15 and I was 17.
Okay.
So we got married when she was 19 and I was 21.
There you go.
So we couldn't have dated any shorter.
So you guys are that couple that my son would be like, see, they made it. I'm like, yeah, I know.
We are the is a really terrific example of God's grace.
There you go.
That's what we are, because we knew nothing getting married, and we didn't even do premarital, which is one of the worst things in the world. But that whole dating time, it was just learning and learning and learning and learning. I feel like we've been married 23 years. And I feel like I'm learning every day. Like I learned something new about my wife. I'm learning something new about myself, how I'm supposed to relate to my wife on a regular basis. And I thought by the time that we got married, I already knew everything. I was like, I know this girl. We've been dating for 4 years or whatever.
So since Julie's not here, how lucky is she to be married to you?
You know what? Honestly, and I say this all the time.
You don't have to answer that question.
But I will say this. I'm married up. And I say this regularly. I'm married up. Like God hooked me up for sure. Like when I met my wife dating, she was crazy about Jesus. Like really, like she had her Bible all yellowed out with highlight and things written in the margins and everything.
I'm not sure you and I should be doing this episode because I married way up. I met Rochelle. I had not yet read a single book of the Bible. And when we were talking, she had just gotten back from smuggling Bibles into China.
Oh,
I was like,
goodness.
Wow. So you're awesome, and I'm pretty much not.
Yeah,
so I hid that from her, ran to the park, read the whole Gospel of John in one day, couldn't remember anything, including John 3:16, and has been trying to keep up ever since. But So don't do it how we did it. Ladies, guys, if you are so fortunate enough to get the opportunity, don't be dumb enough to miss it.
Yes.
But dating, even in and of itself, I don't know if you dated a bunch before you met Julie, if she was kind of like one of the first people. I know for myself, it was weird growing up, and there's all these psychological opinions as to why everyone is the way they are. And that's fine. It's fascinating, but it shouldn't define you.
True.
And but there was always this interesting thought in my mind, right? I didn't do what a lot of girls tend to do, of have their whole wedding planned. But I knew from the time I was in like junior high, like I wanted to get married. And so anytime there was an interest, even though I was young and completely not ready to date, it was in the mindset of, I wonder if this is the person I'm supposed to marry. Really weird. Looking back now, like what's an 11-year-old thinking that for? What's a 12-year-old thinking that? Now, I'm not saying I was honorable, but there was this desire in my soul to do life with somebody.
Yep.
Now, you guys were believers when you were dating. You were not yet believers. I mean, she had her Bible all marked up, so she
was.
seemed to be. Yeah, okay.
She had gone through some difficulties in her family, which actually drove her in the arms of her father, her heavenly father.
Okay.
And she gave her life to the Lord when she was pretty young at camp. I think she might have been 10 or something years old. But then it was like this growth that took place in her life. And recently, kind of interestingly enough, she let me see one of her old kind of diaries that she was writing through.
Okay.
And at 11, like she was writing some extremely spiritually thick stuff that I absolutely was not doing at the same age, or even 5 years after that age, you know? So when I met her, she was on fire for Jesus. And I was a little bit cynical. And I came from a religious home. I won't say Christian. My mom's a strong believer. My dad is not. So definitely religious home. We went to church on a regular basis, but my relationship with the Lord was superficial at best.
Okay.
And I dedicated
So how did you get her to hang out with you?
Well, we ended up going to a leadership retreat at the church that we were both attending. And it was like a last minute thing for me to get on that list. And it was actually a last minute thing for her to get on the list. We ended up there and we ended up talking, and the conversation was awesome. And interestingly enough, she liked this other guy that was on the camping trip, and I liked this other girl. But we didn't get to sit next to those people. We sat next to each other. And so like our relationship started building because we had opportunity to talk.
Yep.
And then finding out that there were some similarities and so on. And then we just talked before we did anything. We talked for months and months and months at a time. And she lived about 35 minutes, 40 minutes away from where we lived. So we didn't get to see each other all the time. So a lot of it, the way that I got to know her is talking to her and vice versa.
Yep.
Which I think was a really good thing. And her excitement about the Lord kind of stoked my fire as well. It certainly did. And then this girl comes and she buys me a Bible. I'm like, who buys somebody a Bible? And then she's like, hey, can we do Bible studies together? I was like, you want to do what? What do you want to do? It's like, I would like to just read the Bible together. Okay. And so we started reading the Bible together. And then leading up to it in our dating, like her parents would go to these marriage conferences and they'd say, hey, you guys want to come along? I guess so. Like I would go along.
That's unique, I think.
So we ended up going to all these marriage conferences before we were married. And then we got married and realized that there was still a whole lot that we had to learn because I had to be in submission to the Lord before I could lead her properly.
Sure.
And so when we started attending Calvary Chapel Chino Hills in 2000, we got married in 2000 and we started attending regularly in 2000. And then I think it was right around 2001 or so, Pastor Jack was doing a marriage study. And that was like a punch in the gut for me because I had never heard these things before. And then it was like, oh no, I've done everything wrong from the very beginning. Like I need to restructure
Nate's
things.
Castle, right? Serve me.
Yeah, it was so weird. So the dating part of it, though, I think was a really great way for us to connect. And so the question always in dating is, well, how long is the right amount to date before you get married? Like,
Do you think there's an actual answer?
Okay, so Julie's uncle, we had a conversation about this years ago before he passed away. He gave me this amazing tidbit of advice. He says, normally I tell people to go through the seasons. And I'm like, what do you mean seasons? Like seasons of life? He's like, no. He's like spring, summer, fall, winter. He's like, because people's temperament change as the weather changes.
So he's a full believer in like the year. You got to do at least the year.
He believes in the year. Now, since then, I've known so many couples who have been married within a year, sometimes 6 months, sometimes less than that.
Yeah.
And it's worked amazingly beautiful. So I think it depends on the situation, But I would say there is something to be said about getting to know the person that you're getting married
Yeah,
to
no doubt.
prior to getting married to them.
So even right, the focus of our conversation being dating, it's accomplishing one of two things in your life. Maybe there's a third or fourth, but from what I've seen and experienced, dating is going to accomplish one of two things for you. Either you have this emotional need for someone to be close knit to you, and they bring comfort, or they bring care, or they bring fulfillment, or they make you feel like a better person, someone you can confide in. They feel all these, and those are wonderful traits. But as soon as they're gone, you're looking for the next person to bring comfort, to fulfill, and all these things to affirm who you are. I don't mean this that you're being malicious. I think you can innocently be using them to make yourself feel better.
I think that's true.
Right. And I think a lot of people
Yep.
fall into that. God designed you for marriage, most people. And so there is this desire for marriage, but you're looking to them to bring that satisfaction, to bring that affirmation. And when they're gone, well, I need it. So you look for the next girl or the next guy to fill that.
Yeah. it's
The
true.
alternative is, boy, and this is tough. I don't know if anyone really thinks this all the way out, but the goal, are you the person that I could see myself living life with? Right? That's the point. You're hanging out with them not because it's fun.
Nope.
You're hanging out with them not because it fulfills something in you. You're hanging out with them, getting to know them, dating them, to see, are we compatible, and is there similar callings upon our lives?
Yep.
Do we exhort and encourage one another towards godliness? Boy, if so, then the whole intent is dating. And the moment those things aren't there, hey, you're a neat person, but not who I'm going to marry, so let's shake hands and part ways.
Yep. That's good.
The latter is the intended purpose.
Yeah.
I think rarely the sole reason. But I don't know if you've seen one side or the other. But the motives for dating, right, are so important.
Yep. Yep. I do think having marriage in mind when you're dating is an important thing. Or even when you're prospecting somebody that you might want to date. Like, can I see myself married to this person? And if you can't, maybe that's not a person you should be hanging out with.
If that's not at least a question, like, way high on your list,
Yep.
you by default are using them to bring some kind of satisfaction.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
don't like being bored on Friday night, so I need a girlfriend. Or there's those deeper emotional things. And I'll tell you one thing. We've been married 20 years plus a little bit. And it didn't take too long. It took us a couple years, but it took, a couple years to realize that if you don't find contentment before you're married,
Ooh, that's good.
your marriage will not bring lasting contentment.
That's true. That is
And
true.
when you wake up one day and realize that you've been blaming your spouse for your lack of happiness,
Yeah. Wow.
you've got a long road to travel.
Yep.
You really do.
Yeah. Ooh.
And walk it. Walk it. If any of you are waking up today and you've made it this far down a dating podcast, even though you're married, and you're waking up realizing I'm not satisfied in my life, and you've been sort of in your mind casting that upon the responsibility of your husband or your wife, look, it's not their job. It's not their job to fulfill you.
Nope.
It's not their job to make you feel needed or affirmed. There's lots of ways in which they should, but that's not their job.
Yeah.
We're to find contentment in the Lord,
Yep.
satisfaction in the Lord.
Yep. And it's unfair to put certain expectations that only God can fulfill on a human being.
Yep.
You're not meeting my needs. Well, God does that.
So I want to step on some toes here. I just do. I don't know why. I hope I'm not being ornery, overdue for another cup of coffee or something. But do the rules change in dating the older you get?
I think, in my estimation, and I don't know because I dated young and I got married young, so I don't know this to be true. But I would think it probably does a little bit because those two people that are supposed to become one, as they're living their life, they're 30, 40 years old, they've been living their life a certain kind of way for a long time. Mm-hmm. So it requires, I think, a lot of sacrifice, maybe more than initial.
Interesting. Okay.
You know, just because you've grown up, you've done your life for 30, 35, 40 years your way. And then all of a sudden you meet this person that you feel God is kind of calling you to spend time with and grow with. And they have their expectations and thoughts and the way they've been doing things for 40 years too. And so it's going to require, you releasing some of those things in order to become one with somebody else, especially if, and I always think this should be, like marriage should be the end goal. Like you don't just date for the sake of dating.
No, I think you're right. I think the sacrifice, I hadn't thought about that perspective, but is probably greater. And greater love has no one than he who lays his life down, right, for a friend. And so if you've become your own man or woman for 40 or 50 years, there's more of you to lay down.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, there is.
But I think hopefully you've also matured an extra couple decades. And so you should be able to discern a little bit better someone's character, personality, giftings, callings, yourself.
Yeah, true.
I hope, right? They've grown in wisdom as they've grown in age. And so maybe those two things balance each other out, or could.
I think so. I have a friend who got married. I think he might have been 41 or 42 years old. And he got married a few years ago. And the girl that he got married to is just amazingly perfect for him. They are
worth the wait.
Just, oh my goodness. And he waited. He waited for the entirety of that time. Didn't really have very many other relationships leading up to that.
So talking about rules, right, changing as you get older, is it fine then if you're in your 50s, it's fine to live together first?
No.
No.
Absolutely.
Oh, man,
Unequivocally.
That was quick.
Absolutely no. No, you don't.
Treat me like I'm a high school kid.
I think this. I think marriage is like when you jump into a cold pool. You don't dip your foot in. Oh, it's cold. It's freezing. I got to make sure the temperature's just right. Nope. You go head first, and that's how you get married.
So you're going to buy the car without test driving it first.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, look, I want to go down a road here because I think that there's two wrongs that are made often. Right? If the relationship gets physical and intimate, it's based upon any kind of sexual morality, something's very wrong. And the majority of the time, the guy is the one pursuing more of that than the girl.
True.
And so, ladies, have enough respect for yourself and demand enough respect to be loved for who you are, not what he gets from you.
Yep.
Right? Look, if he doesn't love you, if you don't do that, he will not love you if you do that.
Yep.
But there's a flip side to this, right? So guys need and desire that more physically intimate connection.
Yep.
Well, girls by nature desire a more emotional connection. And I think girls nowadays, from my observation, ladies, think on it before you get mad about it. The same way a guy can use a girl for physical needs, I've watched girls deplete guys of emotional connection, but never wanting to connect and quote unquote go all the way into marriage.
Yeah. Wow.
I just want to love me like I'm your wife, be available to me emotionally, listen to me, care for me. But as soon as it gets serious, I'm going to bail.
Yep.
And I think it's some weird emotional version of the same thing.
The same thing. Wow.
Where he might be using you for physical needs. You might be using him, prostituting him for your emotional needs.
Yeah. Wow.
Be very careful. Wow. It's terribly wrong. Especially, right, if I'm going to turn this all the way back around. If we're living in a time, people talk all the time now about emotional adultery.
Yep.
An emotional affair is the word. Well, if there can be an emotional affair, then you can emotionally cheat or fornicate. Yeah, emotional
Right?
fornication.
Right.
Oh, gosh. So let's bring this back here. Let's say people in their upper teens and 20s. Those are usually the ones dating.
Yep.
Statistically. What do they look for?
Godly person, first and foremost, before anything else. Do not missionary date. That will never, ever work the way that you think it is.
So just for clarity, Bible says, do not be unequally yoked. A believer is not to have anything to do with a non-believer when it comes to a romantic relationship.
Period.
Yep. Just move on.
And if you do, like, there are consequences that you will reap. And I've had, over the years, I've seen that, and it is nothing that you want a part of.
So common love for the Lord.
Common love for the Lord.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd throw on the list?
I think so. There's the initial, what the Bible says, don't be unequally yoked, like non-believer and believers. That doesn't work, won't work. But I also think sometimes you can be unequally yoked within the faith.
Sure, I believe that.
Where you're married to someone that does not have the same calling, I mean, you're going in two different directions spiritually. You're not growing in the same direction. And for you to get married is going to be a difficult thing. So sometimes you may be a goer and she may be a sender, or vice versa.
I've actually met a couple. He had a huge heart for missions. She thought that was so wonderful, but had no desire to go to Africa. And so they get married, and all of a sudden, it's like, well, what do we do? And you're going to have to work through that. So I think that's a great point. You have to be equally yoked in the faith, but then while in the faith, are your callings compatible? I don't want to say similar. My wife and I have totally different giftings, but they're totally compatible to each other.
Yep. Yeah, my wife and I are we don't have the same things, but it works amazingly beautiful.
Yep.
And so I think, equally yoked in the faith, being kind of the spirit, same mind in the faith. And I think also take time before you get married, before you even get to that place of thinking who you want to get married to, take time to ask God what kind of person that you need. Because sometimes we ask for what we want, and that usually isn't the right thing. Ask for what you need. Lord, give me the type of person that I need in my life. And I got to tell you, like when I was praying, I think I had prayed periodically in my life, even, while I had met my wife, like, Lord, the right person. But God gave me exactly what I needed in my wife. It wasn't just what I wanted, which I think there's definitely elements of everything that I wanted in a woman I got in my wife. But more than that, God gave me exactly what I needed.
The longer I've been married and the longer I've watched people date, and some people make it, some people don't, I'm fascinated how much I think attraction doesn't really matter.
I agree with that.
Now, if you're like, that person's totally ugly, like, okay, if they're repulsive to you,
then maybe not.
Probably a bad sign. But their physical attributes will have nothing to do with your relationship very, very soon.
Yep.
But their ability to love you when you're dumb, their ability to give you truth when no one else will, their ability to encourage you when you're down, their ability to bring joy into your life when everyone else is depleting joy, like those things. I know the way I tell a lot of guys, young guys especially, you want to find someone who's putting forth the fruits of the Spirit.
Yes, amen.
Right? Yep. Don't tell me that they tell you they love the Lord and they go to church all the time. Like, fine. But is there evidence that they have a relationship with the Lord? Yeah. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control.
Yeah.
Like, is the fruit of the Spirit evident? And ladies, same thing. If some guy like is really handsome and really hospitable and polite but has no self-control, he's not kind, he's not loving, he's not patient, kick him to the curb.
Yep.
Right? Like, put him on a boat and send him out to sea.
Yeah, and I think I love the fact that you're putting a list down, because I think a list does matter. I remember this young adults ministry I was a part of years ago. You had these people that would put these lists together of what they wanted, and part of the lists were like, this person has to be a believer, fruits of the Spirit have to be present in their life, and they had a list. Sometimes people would have a page or more full of expectations and non-negotiables.
5'11", crew-cut hair.
Like, absolutely. So I'm like, okay, so and to some degree, I'm like, cool. Man. Like, if that's what you feel like you need in order to see that type of a person. But my encouragement was always to any one of those people. And I remember one person in particular bringing me a list of stuff. What do you think about this list for a suitable person? I was like, well, that is like an A+ person, but right now you're like a C.
Yep.
So you can't expect an A+ type person with all of those wonderful attributes, and you're not that person. So become the person you want to get married to.
Fully. Right, that's the question often, especially like if you're listening to this, you're in junior high, high school, maybe even a young adult. The question isn't, should I marry them? The question is, am I marryable?
Ooh, that's
right. Am I a marryable person? Am I even a contender? For anything? And look, if you are, then take a step of faith. Go for it. Ask her out. I'm shocked today at the level of cowardice amongst men, especially young men.
Yeah.
I remember one time this guy was like, "Oh, I'm totally into this girl," and he was gonna text her. I said, "Just call and ask her out." He's like, "Call like call?" I was like, "Yes, like call and just ask her to get coffee or something. She can even meet you there, right? In case it's weird, she could bail. Probably feel safe." Oh, we're not that level yet. Of getting coffee? No, we're not that level of a phone call. We just text. I'm like, oh my gosh, she deserves someone better. Like, go grow up, be a man.
And call her.
Call her.
It's so interesting. But I think, like we talked initially about, okay, you know, how people connect now. People are connecting through these devices now. And I think, praise the Lord for that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think people meet this way. This is, you know, new way of contact. But I think there's something to be said about phone calls and in-person conversations that you can't replace with a text message. Certain things you don't do over a text message. Like, you don't ask a girl out on a date, in my estimation, over text. Like, that's something that you do in person.
No, I'll tell you right now. Some dude texts my daughter. I'll respond for her. Thank you very much.
That's right. That's exactly right.
He'll meet me at the front door. If you're not man enough to call, you're not man enough to date. I'll tell you that
so
much.
if you want to know dating, you know, like, please call the person up.
Yep.
To me, it's a sign of respect and courtesy. Like, I'm going to call you because I think that you're worth calling. I'm not going to send you a text message. Hey, you want to hang out? Like, no, I don't want to hang out with you.
Yep.
You know.
Boy, we could go down this road for a while. This would be fun. We should probably have this conversation with a couple young adults soon.
Yeah, that would be very, very good.
We should also, I know we've talked about, if you guys have hung on this long, we're going to get our wives in here and give them the mics and let them give you the girly perspective of all of this.
Absolutely.
But look, to wrap things up, in the dating, right, be careful. I think you can do it innocently, but it doesn't change the fact that it happens. That you can date to try and fulfill something in you that God's supposed to fulfill first. Mm-hmm. You've got to find contentment in the Lord before you find contentment in other people.
Amen.
Look for the fruits of the Spirit, right? And then do they cause you to want to be more like the Lord, right? Without poking, prodding, and making your life miserable, do they just naturally, without trying, make you want to be more like the Lord?
Yeah,
and you have fun. Like, can you enjoy each other?
Yeah, that's really good.
And that's it. I think those three key ingredients, right, are going to be some of the most important.
Yeah, I didn't think about the third one that you brought up.
It's so important.
Like, is this person edifying or lifting me up in my relationship with the Lord? Are they encouraging me to want to run after Jesus? That's like,
for me,
huge.
I don't know what it was. And Rochelle wasn't like checking in on me. Are you walking with the Lord? How many Bible chapters did you read this week? It wasn't that kind of prodding me to the Lord. Just being around her, I just want to be more like Jesus when I'm around her.
That's good.
I wasn't a Christian long enough to have any kind of words to use that would impress anyone that's religious. But inside, it was like, I just need more of Jesus in my life to keep up with her. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
Fruits of the Spirit, do they encourage you in the Lord naturally? Can you have fun together? Hopefully you enjoy each other.
Yep, got a lot.
After that, you got a lot going. You might want to buy a ring. That was said kind of whimsically. Pray, but then do.
And then do.
But here's the deal. Last thing I think I'll say is watch their personality with other people.
Yeah.
I've heard this said, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. That a girl will treat her husband the way she treats her dad. And then the same thing, a boy will treat his wife the way he treats his mom.
Yep.
And so if he's super nice to you, but like, leave me alone, Mom. Well, guess who he's going to be yelling at in 10 years?
Yep.
If she's really dreamy with you, but then just a princess with her dad and high maintenance and always just difficult and rebellious, you can have your hands full, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
But look, don't be afraid of it. Seek the Lord.
Yeah.
And then move forward accordingly.
Yeah.
Perhaps today, are you marryable?
Are you marryable? I like that.
So our wives will come help us out next time and probably undo everything maybe we shouldn't have done. But follow Jesus at all costs.
Yes. Amen.
And you will never regret it. God bless you guys.